And I'll play e4. So rating has gone up to 1025. I'll play the Italian. At some point in the series, I'll probably mix up the openings. Usually I play d3. I think in this game, I'll play c3. This is an opening I learned around the 1000 elo. And the idea is to very simply expand with pawn d4, get tempo on the bishop, and pawn d4 is supported by the pawn, the knight, and the queen. So a move like knight f6 or d6, white can still play d4, and the pawn is supported enough times. Now, this opening, I believe, is called the, actually, chess.com says it's called the Giuoco Piano center attack. I think there's a variation called the Molar attack, which maybe we'll go into. Black is so far playing all the most natural moves. Bishop b4 check. And in this position, there's two moves. There's bishop d2 and knight c3. I think knight d2 is also a move, although it's pretty rare. The move I liked to play when I was younger was knight c3. This is one of the first openings my very first chess coach taught to me. Shout out to Tamara Golove. She was one of my first coaches and also the coach of Boris Gelfand and Yuri Shulman. And she taught me an opening growing up that if black takes the pawn, then I can castle kingside, essentially sacrificing another pawn. And there's cases where white will sacrifice a bit of material to get a lot of opening initiative. So we'll see if black wants to snag the pawn here. And we do see bishop takes c3. So we're actually going down a line that I learned when I was probably like 8 or 9 years old. So this is bringing back a lot of nostalgia. Now, of course, my rook's attacked. I think a lot of people who maybe are new to this position would play rook b1. But the move to play, as far as I remember, is queen to b3. I think bishop a3 is also possible. But queen b3 has the idea of hitting the bishop and the pawn on f7. And I'm leaving my rook just available for capture. We're already going to see another example of why you should prioritize piece activity and initiative over material, at least in some cases. And there's not too many options for black in this position. Like if black wants to save f7 with a move like castling or queen e7, then I'll take the bishop and be up material. We see d5. d5 maybe is one of the best moves. Although I think I'm happy to take the pawn and keep all of the attack. I can't recall if I studied this exact position in the past, but yeah, I mean, I still have the initiative against f7 and the bishop, and I lose a rook. As d5 was useful in ensuring that black has some development, but I'm going to take the pawn. King has to choose between a couple squares there. And now it's interesting because I learned this position when I was younger without the inclusion of d5. So I've basically learned the position with the pawn still on d7, after which the best move would be bishop g5 to provoke knight e7. I can show this after the game too, and then knight e5 would be very strong. But because black no longer has a d-pawn, if I play bishop g5, the queen can move up. I guess then I can recapture. But I'm thinking it might be more effective here to play bishop a3, which essentially exploits the fact black can't block with d6, the d-pawn is no longer there, and that will be forcing knight e7. So yeah, let's go for bishop a3. And I know in most games throughout the speedrun series, I have not relied on like deep opening preparation, but I guess this one is a bit of an exception. we did go into one of the more critical, but also like super interesting lines. And yeah, it looks good for white. Just with the two bishops and the queen, seems like there should be like some mating ideas. Despite the fact I'm down, how much am I down? A rook and oh, pawns are equal, so I'm down the whole rook here. I could take back the bishop, but sometimes when you see like an obvious move, you want to still look for your other options. And I think maybe there's a couple alternatives I'm considering here. One is rook e1 to attack the pinned knight. The other is knight e5, which maybe looks a little bit slow because I'm losing d4, but there's a calculation knight e5. Let's say bishop takes d4 looks most natural. And then bishop g6 with the idea that I'm threatening queen f7 checkmate. And the bishop and the knight would be supporting f7, and even though black could take the bishop or the knight, then the other piece will still be helping out with a checkmate. So yeah, this is definitely requiring like higher level calculation than normally you would see at this rating level, but I think I'm going to go for knight e5. And this isn't really like there's definitely a difference between hope chess where you're maybe playing suboptimal moves hoping your opponent goes wrong, but this is more just trying to play what the position calls for. I think because I've sacrificed a lot of material, I want to be as aggressive as possible. I don't want to waste time recapturing the bishop, even though that was probably a fine option. Because if I get in this move, bishop g6, like there's so few resources for black to stop queen f7. And the knight's pinned, so the knight nor the queen can really help block on d5. Yeah, I'm gonna play bishop g6. And this is an idea I learned when I was like pretty young. This so-called clearance idea coming from this exact opening. Another big shout out to Tamara. I'll have to email her a link to this video once it's posted. But yeah, I'm pretty sure the tactics still work in this position. Like I really don't see a defense for black. Like there's so few moves that black can play that don't get mated immediately. Like this doesn't really work because then the rook gets involved. Queen e8 would delay the mate, but I'm happy to win the queen there. And queen d5, I just take it, the knight's pinned. And to be fair to my opponent, like they really did nothing obviously wrong this game. Like they took free material. They just walked into a super venomous opening line, which I think is going to lead to a quick win for white. Opponent is taking time here, but I think it's a little bit too late. I will say that like the mistake from black was taking the material on c3. And actually in this position, the best move is bishop takes c3, as far as I know. But taking twice on c3 is, as we've seen in this game, it runs into a lot of trouble. So opponent does have some time to ponder, maybe regret their earlier life decisions. And I think what I'll do is after the game, I will give an opening lesson on this opening of like how to respond as black. But yeah, okay, queen f7, winning the game in 16 moves. Yeah, hopefully this will give some inspiration to maybe some white players that want to spice up their white opening repertoire, be a bit more aggressive, less materialistic from early on. But yeah, if we go back to, I mean, even to this position, and we'll look from black side. And hopefully this will be a useful lesson to my opponent, but to anyone who plays this as black. So after d4, taking and bishop b4 is the best continuation, but after knight c3, takes and castle, black should take with the bishop here, and I actually wasn't going to take back. I was going to play the move d5. This is the main line. If white takes back, then d5 is a really nice move to attack the bishop, support the knight, get ready to castle. And black is up a pawn here, so this is known to be a little bit preferable for black. But after d5, after bishop takes c3 and d5, then black should play the move bishop f6, save the bishop. And yeah, it's kind of a long theoretical line, but I'll just show how it goes. Rook e1, counterattacking the knight. Black should save this knight, and then after it takes, there's this move pawn d6, ensuring white doesn't get to play d6. And theory keeps going here. Bishop g5 is the main line. And after takes, black should not castle because that walks into some crazy knight sack followed by the queen and rook doubling up. So black should play h6. And then the main line here is queen e2 takes rook e1, and white has a triple battery on the e-file. Black has to lose back the piece. Black should play bishop e6, and after takes, pawn f6. And this is a line that, yeah, my my early chess coach taught me when I was pretty young, and I used to play this for both sides. Objectively, black is a bit for choice here because black's up a pawn, and even though white's pieces look menacing, all the pieces are basically blocked by the blockaded pawn on e6. So this is a pretty well-known position for anyone that plays this opening for either color. But yeah, hopefully an important opening lesson to take away for anyone that didn't know this previously.